Alrighty. So like you mentioned, I've been doing IT almost going on 14 years now. Started with the fortune of getting an opportunity in college and getting to do uh, play with everything in technology all the way to literally the day after I graduated, I started my first business and have been going ever since 2016 nonstop to grow. And Solvera is what it is today from just years of learning experiences, working with hundreds of businesses from mom and pop shops to global enterprises to franchises. So I've kind of seen a little bit of everything at this point, and the world continues to surprise me. So I'm hoping that you guys made some good notes before the meeting, so we'll definitely hit those. But my goal out of this is that you guys, this is interactive. It's something that you guys feel like you can learn from, and hopefully coming away from this, you feel more empowered than I would say fearful or afraid or afraid of the unknown of what you're might be hearing about but don't see every day. Um, it is highly interactive, so as we go through it, please feel free to raise your hand, make a comment, make a note, however we do it, and we'll kind of go through and answer those questions as we go. There are also going to be opportunities for you guys to essentially just answer questions. There is no stupid answers, or please feel free to just be open and share your thoughts, and that way we can all learn together. Um, we kind of covered my intro already. So a few things that you guys mentioned, risk tolerance. Some of you guys have mentioned that you've seen or been part of some level of a ransomware or a cybersecurity attack. Cybersecurity insurance, which is pretty big now for a lot of different reasons. We'll kind of go into that a little bit. Things to look out for, those little gotchas that you want to kind of be careful of before you just submit the form and say, I did this, I did this, I did this. And really, hopefully, like I said, just taking some like really useful tips that don't theoretically cost you any money, but it's more about changing your mindset of how you approach technology and cybersecurity. Alrighty. We usually start with the overview of like saying it used to be like this was a thing where you guys would hear on the news, you'd be like, oh well, this big company got hacked, right? Target or T-Mobile or United Healthcare or any of these businesses, and you see them on the news all the time. But unfortunately, what's kind of happened, especially over the last 5 or 10 years, as technology's gotten more advanced, is it's actually happening more often, even though you don't hear about it as much. And we'll go into that a little bit. So, what we try to tell our clients, we try to tell everyone is there are too many open vulnerabilities in the world today. There are too many data points that we use, phones, desktops, laptops, tablets, computers, in-home lighting automation, things from all different countries that we don't even check, right? So there's so many different entry points to where data goes in and out that at this point, it's really not, when your business will be attacked, but are you prepared if it does happen? The other example I'll give you is, we're all sitting here working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, doing what we do, what we love, what we're great at. Somebody else is working 40, 50, 60 hours a week to find a way to get into vulnerabilities, to steal money, to steal data, and to hold ransoms, etc. So it's not just those like one-off situations now. It's an everyday thing, and we see it attempting to happen every single day. Um, so just as we kind of go through some of these, if you guys want to just, I don't want to say raise your hand, that's what we normally do, but just, I guess, speak up. Does anybody know what ransomware is specifically? Something working. I should put this back here.
Expensive?
Expensive. That's a good one. It can be. It's interesting because this little guy here has become a very big what I call buzzword, or like big attention grabber. Most people say like, oh, encrypt files or encrypt data or steal information, and then hold it for ransom that you're going to sell back to somebody. That is all still true, but that's actually not necessarily the most dangerous part of ransomware, because a lot of times companies, especially in the size of the companies that you guys have already, mentioned that you've worked with, they have backups. So, if I can recover a business that gets hit by ransomware in 2 hours, what's really the threat? And what we're seeing a lot of today is it's actually like using that data against the company itself, especially if they're able to steal it. So, for example, usually they'll go over like a Tor network or some sort of encrypted network to communicate, but they might say, hey, I've stolen X amount of your data, I have it, and if you don't pay me, 300, $400,000, I'll go ahead and release this. But not only release the information, because that would be bad, but maybe they release your back and forth communication. Then they say, oh, I have all of your HR files and all of your company's employees' personal information, where they live, and their social security number, and their pay stubs, and their contracts, right? And so if all of that information were to get out, and a large company or even a small company were to find out, that organization didn't theoretically hold the value of those employees' personal information or their clients' personal information at value, that's a really bad look on the company itself. So yes, it's bad to have, a situation where your files are locked. There's lots of ways to prevent that. It's even worse to be embarrassed in the world if those kind of communications are then leaked, and then your employees, your clients' data is then out there in the world, because then they're the ones that have to deal with it. And if they find out it was you, obviously not a good look there. Anybody familiar with the term keylogger? So if you're not super familiar with that, essentially it's a program that can be installed. Sometimes you see it now even on phones, where I forgot the name of it. It's a little device you can buy on online, and you can literally plug it into like an iPhone or another device, and it can actually steal the data and information in between your device and a Wi-Fi point. Or it can be like a keyboard, for example, where everything you type is then logged and sent back. So if you go to bankofamerica.com and punch in your information, not a great situation, because it knows your passwords and usernames. Not seen as often, but definitely still there. Viruses are still common. A lot of people use, free antivirus programs, things like that. Viruses are more complex than just obviously running. They can be stopped, they can be quarantined, but the truth is most people don't know that they're actually on the computers, because maybe something didn't pick it up. It's kind of like expecting, I don't know, let's say like a vacuum, right? Like those little robot vacuums that we have that go around and clean our houses for us. They do a pretty good job of like cleaning up things, but they're not 100%, right? They still miss spots. They still don't pick it up, perfectly, and they got to go back and back and again and again and again. So antivirus is no longer enough to essentially protect a business or a computer or a device by itself. So just a few little examples of things and kind of how they're changing, besides just hearing the word itself and understanding how that kind of plays into businesses. I put together a quick list. We update this every year. Last year it was, I think, 13 or 14 big companies that we had. I think I used to be in the automotive industry when I first started IT, and they used a program called CDK Global, which essentially runs all of the dealer management services for car dealerships around the globe, for every single type of car dealership you can imagine. And years ago, I was like, this company is going to get hacked like really badly. They were still using protocols from the 90s, early 2000s. Like, they weren't taking cybersecurity seriously. And it got to the point where I think for like a week or two, car dealerships essentially went back to like writing pen and paper deals, because the technology just didn't work. Most recently, SharePoint. Thankfully, it was more on the local side. If you guys have ever used SharePoint on Microsoft, there's like a cloud version and then there's like a local version. The local version had a big vulnerability. Cisco, obviously, you guys have heard of. WhatsApp end-to-end encryption, obviously not unhackable. So it's an every month or an everyday thing. I could have probably put another 100 examples on here. And some of the companies that we talked about before have obviously been hacked. And so I think once again, it goes back to that first statement I made. It's not, if, it's more of a when statement. And when that happens, is the business or the technology solutions, are they prepared to deal with that? Especially as we get more and more advanced with AI and different changes and things that are going on. So here's the first question anybody would like to answer. Why do you think that it's mainly, uh, the Targets of the world and the T-Mobiles of the world and the AT&Ts of the world that you guys see on TV, social media, etc.?
They're the ones that have the data about us.
Say one more time, sorry.
I said they're the ones that have data on us.
The personal information.
Yeah, personal. They're the ones that have personal information about a large user base.
That's true. It's interesting because recently I actually had a situation where one of our clients' CPAs, their QuickBooks account got hacked. And I think they have over 250 clients. So in theory, we definitely agree with that. But at the same time, if I were able to get into one small company's business and access hundreds of, different files and companies and CFOs and payment types and access to information that I normally wouldn't have had, in theory, you're right. At scale, it would be easier, but it would also be more difficult because those companies are, they have the monetary means to protect themselves. But I think definitely more so the mainly why you see them. Why don't you see the mom and pop shop down from Charleston like that got hacked maybe a week ago? Like those kind of companies to me aren't raising their hand and saying like, hey, guess what just happened? They don't have the bandwidth, they don't have the resources, they don't have the means and or want or desire to like call themselves out. So when it comes to these bigger companies, the only reason you see them is because they kind of have to tell you. But normally, if you look at things like Ticketmaster that happened recently, they didn't let you know for months. Like you found out about it and then it was all over the news, but it was 3, 4, 5 months later. And it's like, oh, like you can almost read you can read the communication. Back in 3 months ago, we experienced a data breach and confirmed that all of this stuff was done. It's like, okay, well, you waited 3 months to let everyone know that. It's a very long time to have people's passwords, usernames, credit card information, addresses, passwords for their accounts all linked out to the world for 3 months that they didn't even know about. So I think the reason, in some ways, yes, they definitely do have a lot of that information data to get that attention, but they really have, they have the visibility, whereas a small, medium-sized mom and pop business that goes out of business because they got hit with a $150,000 cybersecurity attack, you're not going to hear about them as much, unfortunately. Two quick examples, because I think somebody just asked a question, various cyber attack. So I can give you two that I can think of that are related to this. The first one was there is a company that their email got hacked and someone went in and saw that they were sending ACH payments like via a written document. So you'd have to either use it as like an Adobe fill-out or whatever like that. You put in the routing number, the account number, etc. They opened up a fake bank account in Orlando with Chase. They changed the ACH information that they had on file for this company and then converted the payments instead of going to their bank account to this other bank account with a very similar name. They paid $85,000 to the wrong company. By doing that, not only did they pay $85,000 to the wrong company, they still owed $85,000 to the right company. So they ended up being out $170,000. How that happened, for the answer to this question, they used something that we're going to look at in a little bit called typo squatting, which I'll explain to you in a few. It's for you unfortunate ones that have domains that have double letters or letters that could be misconstrued as other letters in their domain, and they didn't have the proper email protections in place. Another example of one is essentially there's a lot of firewalls. So, for example, Sonic Wall, I think, is a pretty big one you guys have heard of. Obviously, Cisco and there's tons of them out there. Sonic Wall has a very bad habit of running into vulnerabilities. They send out an email about once a month now about, oh yeah, we have this huge vulnerability and it needs to be patched. The problem even with that is that they don't let you know until somebody's broken it, right? So a lot of the times it's the systems and software and hardware that you're paying for that is actually the gateway to get around most of the security that you put in place. And by the time you realize it, it might be too late. So it's not always something as simple as like employee did this, team member did this, company did this. It might just be pure bad luck on the side of a lot of people. If you guys remember, it's about a year ago, I think we had the CrowdStrike incident that happened. Did a bunch of updates around the world, crashed a bunch of Windows computers, everyone started freaking out. Even when that happened, it just shows you how something that was meant to like protect and something that was meant to work to help the businesses actually came back and unfortunately bad luck hurt them because somebody didn't check an update file before they pushed it out. So there's so many different methods, and this is, you know, back to that initial conversation, you know, not if but when. There's so many different points that you can kind of get hit from that you're never going to protect them all. It's more about just being prepared for all the possibilities that can happen and making sure that the business can function, run, and protect itself as best as it can. We're not looking for perfect solutions. We're looking for strong and scalable solutions at this point. I hope that answered your question on Zoom as well.
Anthony, this is Shivraj. I was the one who asked the question. One of the things is like you, in the previous slide, if you could go back, you had all these different vehicles of attack, right? Ransomware, yeah, this one, yes. Ransomware, worms, keylogger, etc. My question, I'm still trying to understand clearly, what is the common denominator behind these? Are these just algorithms? Are these various kinds of like, piracy software that's interjected into, honest company softwares? What exactly is Trojan? What exactly is a ransomware? I mean, what are the common denominators that kind of like, are the bad actors?
So thousands of different ways to do that. But I think if you were to look at, we'll just focus on viruses, ransomware, everything on this page, right?
Yeah.
Essentially has to come in from somewhere. It won't just magically show up because you turn on your computer one day, right? Unless Microsoft really screwed up, which would be really bad. At some point, it has to come from something. So it has to enter a business network. It has to enter through a firewall. It has to enter through an email. It has to enter through me calling up and pretending to be somebody's IT company, remoting into their computer and installing something, right?
Right.
Most of the time, there's not going to be an automation to that, but it takes some level of force to happen. That's not always the case with like this kind of stuff because, for example, the firewall vulnerability that I mentioned happened to be with like a VPN. So a lot of people use VPNs because they're more secure. Well, what if the VPN has a vulnerability that allows a bad actor to get around the security of the VPN, which allows them access to the network, right? Which is what's actually happened. I've seen that happen. And you're paying this company thousands of dollars to protect your network, and they just made a gaping hole in the easiest part of the network to get into, which is a firewall, and therefore gaining access to everything. So I would say everything on this page, theoretically, you can say has some level of I have to do this. However, the example that I just gave you with that firewall, ransomware hit that system and nobody had to do anything. It was literally a failure on the third party, the actual application or the hardware provider for not keeping up with their software and having a 0-day exploit that they didn't let anybody know about.
Gotcha.
So it can
Thank you.
depend.
That you've clarified that. Thank you.
Anthony, just a quick question. How secure is the Gmail for sending confidential information, chances of getting hacked? As Google.
It depends. I mean, Gmail itself, not great. But I mean, Microsoft and Google, they both support what's called like end-to-end encryption. So while your email's in transit, in theory, it should be completely, safe. Nobody should be able to go in the middle and pull the email apart and see what's in it. But that doesn't mean that people don't set up their email records properly. So a big thing that's happening now is another point that you were asking, various cyber attack. It's like a form of phishing. So I can pretend to be any company that I want and send an email pretending to be that company and asking for information, making it look like it actually came from me, not Anthony@gmail.com. Maybe it's Anthony@SolveraTech.com. If I didn't have the right protections in place to keep myself from being spoofed in that sense. So, email's as secure as you make it. You want to have some of the things that we're going to talk about in this meeting: two-factor authentication, end-to-end encryption. If you're sending information, I highly recommend don't send social security numbers, passwords, pictures, even SMS, which I think we all kind of thought for a while was like a very secure way, where it's like, oh, I'll just text, Jimmy my password. Who's going to be, intercepting the password? Come to find out, the end of last year, the FBI said that China and was able to interface between iPhones and Android devices and steal information that was being passed between them via SMS, which is insane. So it's interesting. Obviously, you guys know about Signal, which happened with the U.S. government. You had that big issue recently. That was an end-to-end encryption software that theoretically its weakest vulnerability wasn't its technology, it was humans. It was mistakes. So these cyber threats and issues can happen both on a people level, on a technology level, on a oops, I forgot level. It could be just straight up like lack of resources. I mean, sky's the limit. So I hope that as we kind of go through this, you guys will see some of like the different things that you can do to prevent these things from happening. I'm not even going to go and say that Solvera will never be hacked, but in 13 years, it's never happened. Now that's going to go on YouTube. Somebody's going to probably try to do this. But I sleep pretty well at night, knowing that there are certain things within a business infrastructure that you can do that you don't have to worry about as much. And some things are not that critically difficult. They're just from a business standpoint. And when we talk about like leadership moving forward and how technology and leadership go hand in hand, it needs to come from the top down, right? So I've worked with business owners in the past that say like, oh, well, yeah, it sounds great. Make sure the team does it, but they're not doing the same steps as everyone else, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand where leadership has to kind of push some of the cultural changes of cybersecurity down, and then everyone has to kind of buy into it within the company culture and make sure that it's a priority, because they're not only protecting your clients' information, they're not only protecting their own, because HR has a lot of data on a lot of people. They're also protecting the future of the company. So it's really important that everyone kind of goes hand in hand with that. I hope that answered both of you guys' questions.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So this is an interesting one. Does anybody have any idea why, and especially I see you guys have mentioned cyber insurance, why you think that more small and medium-sized businesses are targeted now more so than before?
Probably
Less
less,
obstacles. Go ahead.
I was going to say less training. The bigger companies, there's a lot of training on this stuff. Where small companies, you're going to have less, so they may not know what the risks are, or what to do when they see that stuff. Definitely
Less training, 100%. And I think too, when it comes to training, it's a mix, right? Because it's not like that one-time thing where it's like, hey guys, we did our 1-year seminar on cybersecurity. Now, go back to doing everything you're doing. It's the same as anything. It's got to be kind of constantly delivered through simulation training, through your technology team sending out updates every so often on new things that are happening in the company. And it kind of comes off as a little annoying because you're like, I got 20 million things to do, but one of those things, unfortunately now, and it's the responsibility of us as, in the IT field, and then the employees and management on their side, is it's a group effort. So definitely training. Anybody have any other ideas? That's somebody else, something that was technically right.
I'd venture to say less hurdles, and to the earlier point, penetrating SMBs and other smaller mom and pop stores or, businesses is a lot more easier because they haven't taken all the precautions and, all the major, what you call mitigating software to prevent
100%.
that. Yeah.
100%. And you see that a lot because there's that mentality of I'm so small, why would anybody want to hack me? I've heard that a million times before. And it's one of those things that it's like that the concept of, I own a Mac, my computer can't get a virus, right? That kind of thing that goes out there. And it's definitely important to know that no matter how big or how small you are not immune to like these kind of things. So definitely a great answer. I'll give you guys a big one. Cybersecurity insurance. That's a huge one. Before, companies didn't pay out for stuff. Like if you were to hack a company, a big company, and say, hey, $300,000, they could theoretically pay for it. But how is a small medium-sized business going to pay $300,000 for a ransomware attack? And that's where cybersecurity insurance kind of comes into play. So in some ways, it's good that they exist because it does protect you from a legal standpoint, a PR standpoint, a data recovery standpoint, costs that are associated with bringing like that company back online. But on the negative side, it also says, hey, if you have cybersecurity insurance, you're more likely to pay out X to get this money back, because companies do end up paying ransoms, or at least they offer to. I've worked with a few. One of the big ones that did it was I'm forgetting the name now. Wow, huge company. It'll come back to me in a minute. And essentially, they were negotiating for about 6 weeks, back and forth, until you just keep negotiating and negotiating, like once every few days, to try to see if you can buy yourself time. And so there's definitely a piece of that, but if your company is going to crumble and they say like, hey, $50,000 and maybe you can get your data back, some people are willing to pay that now because they don't really have much of a choice. So I think cyber insurance is definitely partly to blame. I definitely think training is partly to blame. Not having the resources, and also at the end of the day, you're a very easy target because you don't have to look that far, right? If I wanted to go after IBM, that's going to be pretty challenging, right? They have multiple layers of security in place and different systems and different pieces. Now, in theory, it would be easier because there's more chances that maybe something gets missed, but it might be harder for something to kind of get by without getting caught. Whereas a small size business, you can get in pretty easy, get past the firewall, and once you're in, and then you realize that everyone saves their passwords in an Excel spreadsheet, makes your life really easy. So there definitely something to be aware of when you guys are signing up for cybersecurity insurance. Just know that it's there as a resource as long as it's set up properly, and to make sure that your company can function if it goes through that sort of situation. Some of the examples that we have here that you'll see in cybersecurity, data breaches, I'm sure you guys have heard of. Social engineering, something where we might pretend to be you. And a big AI piece of this is now voice, right? So now that my voice is on YouTube, somebody could theoretically replicate my voice, and they could pretend to be Anthony from SolveraTech, and they can call X company and say, you're getting hacked right now. I need to log into your computer and my system is down. Can you get me in ASAP? Right? And so AI is kind of a threat in that sense. And you're also seeing it on video. So if you see the Sora videos, the AIs with the funny gorillas, etc., it's getting more and more realistic. So it's getting harder for people to distinguish the difference between what's real and what's not, what's AI and what's not. And as voice starts to get involved in that, it's going to be even more difficult for employees to differentiate the two. So it's up to the companies to essentially put more regulations in place to help prevent those kind of issues. Phishing, another huge example, we see this every day, like without fail, to every single company we work with. Essentially just going out and trying to pretend to be somebody you're not, or sending an email that has a false link in it that looks like Microsoft but isn't. Maybe getting you to click and enter data into something that looks like what it is, like a Microsoft sign-in form or a Google sign-in form or a bank login form. We see that a lot too through SMS now. So in Florida, they had something where we have tolls in Florida. I don't know if they have tolls in certain other cities you guys live in, but they were like, oh, your tolls are overdue and yada yada yada. So they were sending that out to everyone, and they ended up putting on the highway like ignore the spam toll SMS messages for months in Orlando, which was kind of interesting. So we've seen a lot of that. We've also seen examples of QR codes being used. So in Orlando, we have the parking, like the parking meters. We can scan a QR code and it downloads an app. And somebody went around downtown Orlando and put hundreds of false or fake QR codes linking the bank payments to the wrong location to park your car, which was pretty interesting. So that can be done through almost any, email, text message, etc. Network security obviously is huge, especially the bigger the company. Compliance is huge. So if you're in finance, legal, medical, keeping data up to date, making sure that you have it for the time that you need it for. HIPAA, SOC2, PCI compliance if you're taking payments, making sure data is properly held where it's supposed to go. That's been pretty big right now because a lot of times when, especially in healthcare and AI, there's a lot of risks when it comes to like HIPAA and stuff like that. Multi-factor authentication, you see it all the time. I know you guys have probably seen something called a passkey, which has been coming out more and more recently. The first meeting or presentation we did about 2 years ago, somebody asked me about a passkey, and I was like, I can't tell you too much about it because I don't use it every day, but I'll be interested to see what it can do. And 2 years later, I like it, but I see a lot of potential issues with it. One of the biggest is like, if for some reason, I use all my passkeys in my password manager, right? So if for whatever reason I was locked out of that account, in theory, a password would have been slightly better than a passkey. Or if somebody were to gain access to that, then they would suddenly be able to just get in without a password. So there's definitely some risks there, but multi-factor is definitely getting a lot bigger. It's just not being used by everyone because they don't like the annoyance of, oh, I just got a thing. Let me pick up my phone, scan my face, punch in my code. Okay, cool. That's a lot of work, right? Especially in the middle of a busy day. So there's better ways to do that.
We have a hand raised from Claude.
Yes.
Anthony, quick question on the prior slide when you're talking about small business cyber. I guess when we were just talking about it in general. So are you recommending that if you can self-insure or potentially self-insure that, because it sounded like you were saying that if you get cyber insurance, you're basically signaling that you're willing to pay, or that was my takeaway or what I was hearing you say. And so by not having it, you're kind of basically not putting yourself out there that you're willing to pay to cyber criminals or things. Is that a fair statement? Or
Not
I guess I'm just kind of trying to hear.
Sorry, that might have come off a little bit incorrect there. It's more of if you have it, like, so the question was, why are SMBs targeted more? It's because they have cybersecurity, like 10 years ago, small businesses didn't have cybersecurity insurance, right? There was just big companies. Now that exists, it now makes small and medium-sized businesses technically targetable because they could theoretically get a payout. So it's not to not have it, it's just to understand that is what kind of pushed a little bit more of the targeting towards small and medium-sized businesses. But I would definitely still recommend having it. Just make sure when you do have it, check all the boxes twice. And the only reason I say that is just kind of like auto insurance or home insurance. If they have a gotcha on something, you don't want to be in that gotcha situation when your business is failing and then they're like, oh, we're not going to cover you for this because you didn't actually do X, Y, and Z. So that's more so. I hope that clarifies that a little bit.
It does. Thank you.
Great question. And then this guy here, this will be the most interesting one we kind of talk about. But Zero Trust is something that's a little bit newer. Back when I was 2013, 2014, I had this concept in my head. I was like, man, it'd be really cool if on a computer I could only allow X number of programs to run and that was it. And if you weren't part of that group, you just wouldn't function. Because I was going through a bunch of issues where people install applications or things that they didn't need and it would cause problems, or they do updates when they weren't supposed to, or they download the wrong version of something. More so back then, they were like, they'd go to Adobe and then they download some weird version of Adobe that had a virus in it. So this is essentially a new way that's been coming around the last few years to essentially prevent that from happening and giving a lot more control of the company to what goes onto their company systems without having to worry about admin controls or restrictions. So the main goals of cybersecurity, at least for us, are obviously make sure it's secure, add as much prevention as we can, and make sure that you're compliant while doing it. Those are kind of some of the main areas of cybersecurity that we focus on. I'll kind of go over this one a little quick because we did go over that earlier. I think data loss, definitely. Financial loss, yes, unfortunately, you're going to get hit with that. Operational disruptions, your business will not function. This one is a big new one that is not fun because it really paints the company in a bad light when the opportunity was there to pay somebody and then you chose not to, or the opportunity was there to theoretically save data from going out and it wasn't done. Now, can you trust a liar or a thief or somebody who's stealing data and information? No. Like, hey, here's $50,000. Like, please give me my data back. Like, is that really the way to do things? Probably not. But if your first reaction was, screw you, I don't need this data, whatever, I'm just going to leave it alone and not say anything, it just goes to show you didn't really care in the first place. And if that gets to the wrong people, which if I'm able to hack your company, chances are I have everyone's email, everyone's phone number, everyone's address. I can very easily, as a bad actor, send that information to the entire company and just show like how you did not care, or to all of your clients if I got that information showing that there was zero effort made to essentially protect their data or information. So it's just evolving over time and it's getting a little bit more and more complicated. As for phishing, huge problem right now. Like I said, SMS, email, AI is getting more and more involved in that. 3 things, like super simple, and I'll give you guys a few examples we go through here. Really make sure is that who's sending you what you think they're sending you. I'll give you guys an example of how difficult that can be sometimes. Always verify, right? I know you guys are really intelligent. You guys deal with, financial data all the time. So if somebody were to send you a form saying, hey, update my ACH information, I would hope that somebody's going to call and verify, not just fill it out and send it back, which is what happened on the $85,000 mistake that happened by somebody that ended up costing them $170,000. And really think, like, is this something that I need to send somebody, or is this something that I need to click on? We tell our clients, like, hey, if you're not sure, just send us an email. Like, I'd rather be safe than sorry. And there's a bunch of tools and technology you can put in place, and there's AI within email security now, but it's not going to catch everything. So if you're not sure, always just check with your IT provider, check with somebody who knows what they're doing, because it's better to be safe than sorry. And I'll show you guys a few cool ways that you can sort of see that. Actually, I have that pulled up here. Really cool little thing. Google made this a few years back. Let me go ahead and do this real quick. So I can do this. If you guys can't see this very well, just let me know. But essentially, the way that this works is I can kind of hover over this email and I'll show you guys exactly how emails can look legitimate or not. So if you guys are using Google email or Microsoft email, you might be able to see some of these things. So for example, you can see here, this is an email from Luke JSON 8000, whatever, irrelevant. They shared a document with me, right? If I hover over this document, do you guys see how on the bottom left of my screen down here, that something always pops up? Same exact thing will happen if I hover over this button here that has this little open button here. So one of the things that you want to do when we said before, let me go back to this other page, think before you click, right? You can still, without theoretically thinking, you can hover over something and see what it is before you even click on it. So does anybody want to tell me if you guys think that this is phishing or legitimate based on that URL?
Looks like phishing because it's pretty, unusual kind of, the address there. I could see that. Looks like.
Okay, we'll mark it. Perfect. And if you look too, because you saw how I showed you guys those hyperlinks, essentially when you see that drive-google.com, that's usually a red flag in itself, because if you were to go, for example, because I can actually do this now, it's drive.google.com, right? It's not this. So there's little things that you can pick up when you just hover over something, and that goes back to that think before you click. So great job. Next, where's my little next button? Okay, yes.
What happens if you click on this document? Then can you recover after that if it's done, or
that's where zero trust comes in, and I'll show you guys how that kind of functions in a second. But that's why antivirus isn't good enough, is because if that's one of those things where the vacuum cleaner is on the floor and misses a spot, there's a lot of problems that come after that. So, but great question.
Thank you.
What do you guys think about this one?
Phishing.
Phishing.
Yeah, it's a real blend of techniques. Gotta love their little things. But yeah, the mismatched domains are definitely one of them. So if you see here, even if this was correct, because theoretically it could be, this here is not the same as what's on the bottom there. You can see where it says .cloudfront.net. So if you guys are familiar with how domains work, you have your beginning, which is your security, so HTTPS. Then you have your the beginning of your domain, so this can be whatever it wants to be, it doesn't matter. Have a period, then another, the actual domain itself, and then a .com. So if I did this, right, I'm kind of creating a few issues here, because this shouldn't be allowed in theory. Anything after the .com is pretty much where that ends. So right here, you can see after that cloudfront.net on the bottom left, everything after that is essentially the path at where it's going to. And because you don't see anything from Coca-Cola on here, coca-cola.com, makes it a lot easier to tell. Let's see. All right. This one's a fun one. So this is a invoice from PayPal, our favorite thing for finance people, right? What do you guys think?
So it has service at pay, well, there's no at on the bottom at all.
That's okay. This is a perfectly legitimate email. As long as it's spelled correctly, this is fine. But all of their links, you can see how all their links say paypal.com, like we were talking about earlier, and then have the path. So to me, everything looks pretty good on this email. I don't see anything that would kind of make me say like, oh, this isn't legit. I'm just double checking to make sure I say that and I'm like, oh, are all of these links good? So yeah, I'm pretty sure. See, fissures hide. So a note from seller. Scammers created a false sense of urgency. Sometimes you see that in the actual, like essentially the way things are written, you can kind of tell. There's evidence that your PayPal account has been accused, accessed unlawfully, right? Nobody's going to say that. They're hoping that you call this number. Okay, that makes sense. So even when the links are correct, like you just saw, you're still looking out for like the verbiage and things like that that pop up. All right, so next one, Dropbox, dropboxmail.com. And then I think we go here.
I've never seen Dropbox Mail as a domain.
Fair point. I don't know if I have either, to be honest. Let's see. Think. Yeah, all of these links look good. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this one. Hooray. Is unusual but legitimate because yes, you're correct. The Dropbox.com is their normal one. Sometimes what you'll see is like companies won't use their and this is a good lesson to learn too, just in case you guys ever do this. So when you guys send out a bunch of emails to everyone through like MailChimp or Constant Contact or something like that, you never want to use your actual domain because if that domain gets blacklisted, it could potentially keep you from being able to send emails out. So you always want to use some different, slightly different version of your domain when sending emails out. Sometimes you'll see like something right before the Dropbox mail, and you'll also see like people when they send out emails that say, hey, please save this as like a safe sender list in their initial email, and they'll tell you to check your junk mail for the first one. All right, so this is an example of like the SMS spoofing, for example. Oops. I've actually seen this happen to me once. Didn't fall for it, but I saw it and I was like, oh, that's interesting how they did that.
Yeah, it looks like they were trying to get into your account, and the verification code goes to you, and they're trying to have you send them the verification code to get into your account.
Yep, and sometimes what you can do is I don't want to do this in a live example, but you can I can guess somebody's Google or Microsoft account, less so Microsoft, more so a Google, and you can reset your codes in certain websites through text message. So if I know what your phone number is, because it's not that hard to figure that out with the internet now, because your data has been leaked a million times anyway, it makes it a lot easier for me to try to do this kind of SMS spoofing to be like, oh, did you just reset a password? Please enter this verification code or send this verification code to prove that you haven't done it. So just making sure that if it was not you, don't give this code to anyone other than yourself. We say the same thing with the authentication codes when they pop up. So for example, these little guys here, when you have these little authentication codes, it's the same exact thing. You need to make sure that they're essentially only shared with whoever they're shared with. Let's see. Someone just used your password to sign in. Okay, so google.support. I think this is actually an example of the one I gave you guys before, where I said when you have google.com or like solveratech.com, and then you have another .org. So you see on the bottom there how it says .com/security whatever .org.
Yeah.
That's how people will hide that fake email address. So they might do something like this to make it look like the actual domain name's in there, but it really isn't. It's actually a prefix to the actual domain name. So yeah, that's oh, interesting. Yeah, hacking politicians' emails and stuff. That makes sense. Because if you were to click on this link, it would take you to a page that looks just like the Google sign-in page, except it's not, and you just gave somebody access to your password, which happens all the time. All right, and we'll do one more for good luck. How are we doing on time, Scott?
8:07.
Okay. All right. So government-backed hackers trying to steal your password. So here, we'll kind of go back to this then just to make sure I get through this. So just a few examples. I'll send you guys a link for it if you guys want to send it out to your team or have people practice with it. It's just a good example just to show how certain things you want to look out for, especially when it comes to phishing. Employees, like we mentioned before, unfortunately, weak passwords, phishing scams, like I just showed you, sending information through email that shouldn't be sent, etc. There's a number of essential problems that you'll pop into when you start having people that aren't part of the cybersecurity culture, like giving out information. So that is legitimately one of your weakest entry points. And it's not because people are bad, it's because they just don't know better, or they might make a mistake. Especially with AI and other things happening now, there's more ways for it to look, emails to look more real, attacks to get more sophisticated, video and voice to start taking over daily communications. So training is an absolute must. So out of curiosity, does anybody know the recommended minimum passwords length in 2025?
Oof.
Is it no longer 8?
I wish.
It's got to be at least 12.
A little higher.
16?
Yep, 15 to 16 exactly. So when you talk about like brute forcing or guessing your password, now obviously, and I'll talk about this example in a minute of using the same password over and over again, these numbers don't really make any sense. But if it's just brute forcing a computer, just trying and trying and trying, you can see how the longer it tries, the longer it takes to theoretically do that. This isn't taking into account supercomputers, and it's not taking into account that most people use the same password on every single website or a same variation of the password. So for example, if I were to go to log in on Gmail and my password were my dog 2025 plus Gmail, and my other password for Ticketmaster was my dog 2024 plus Ticketmaster or TK or whatever, and I'm using the same sort of like versions of it, it still becomes kind of easy to guess at that point because you're reducing the amount of characters that something has to guess before it's able to get in. But try to keep your passwords 15 to 16 characters and try to use something like this, which is like a little, like a password manager, a password generator. So you can see here, nobody's guessing that password, right? Whatever this random one is. And it's very easy. I don't have to come up with it. I don't have to think about it. I come here to save password. It pulls in the site that I'm on. It punches in my password that I already have here that I'm not going to use for anything. And I'm going to use it for yahoo.com, right? I save it, and now my password's saved. I don't care what it is. I don't need to know what it is. And on top of that, I'm going to add some form of two-factor authentication, so that way I can enhance the security. So not only do you have to guess these random passwords, you also have to have this two-factor authentication code that's going to expire every 30 seconds. Do that on every single website and watch how fast nobody can get into your stuff. It's honestly that easy and that simple, but a lot of times that little bit of work that I just showed you, people want to do. So they use the same passwords over and over again. So definitely something that you'd want to do. Another thing you could do, I'll go ahead and pop this open because I don't want to use mine if this is going online. So what you can do is, if you use any of these platforms, there's something that they have like a breach watch, essentially. So it can find if you're using the same passwords on multiple sites, if any of your passwords have been stolen. I know Google does this in its password manager as well. So it'll let you know, like, hey, this password's already been, put on the dark web or wherever. And essentially it allows you to have like an assistant that's almost looking at your passwords at all times, saying, hey, don't keep using the same ones. Don't make it that easy. And using something like that 16-digit random one, it's going to be a lot harder to get into things than it would be otherwise. So this is an example of typo squatting that we talked about earlier. So can anyone tell me which one of these is the correct domain for SolveraTech? And it's totally a trick question. This guy obviously isn't it, and this guy has a 0 here. Does anybody know the difference between these two?
Is one a capital I and one a small L?
Exactly. So if you're unfortunate like us, right, and somebody sends an email to your email, remember how we did those phishing examples a minute ago? If it looks like it came from Anthony at SolveraTech, but it really came from Anthony at Cybersecure or whatever that would be, and I own that domain, right? Because anybody could theoretically buy it and pretend to be you. You could technically fall for it. It sounds exactly like the same name. This also is unfortunate for companies that have 2 letters that repeat themselves, particularly O's, zeros, L's, I's. It's just not. It's just unfortunate. But I've seen this happen, and this is what caused that company $170,000 because they didn't look at the right domain when it was sent. So just a fun little thing to see. It just when you're looking at those emails, I'll show you guys one more thing really quick. So you see up here how it shows like the different emails and stuff like that. Sometimes what you'll see here is it'll kind of give you an alert, and it'll be like, hey, this looks like it's from a suspicious sender or something like that. So if you're a company like mine that might have that little bit of a risk in there, it's even more important to look for Outlook and Google Workspace and tools like that show you like, hey, this isn't coming from your domain, even if it looks like it actually is. So there are tools out there to kind of help prevent those kind of things. So zero trust we'll talk about a little bit here. So like think about it like a forest. Autoplay, sorry. Let's do, there we go. Essentially you have thousands of applications that a computer can access at a given time, right? And normally, what is the only thing between a user installing an application and them running it? It's just an admin password or as antivirus. So what actually confirms and checks that the program they're installing is the correct version, that the person who's installing it is the correct person, the application is doing what it's intended to do, right? It's not, for example, Spotify is a great one. Everyone likes Spotify. Well, Spotify by itself has a built-in network feature that allows you to connect to nearby devices. So when you bring your laptop into work, or you bring your speaker into work and you want to have Spotify or Amazon thing or whatever it is, you're essentially opening your network up to a tool that, while it's well-intentioned, as we can see with Ticketmaster and all these other companies that have been hacked in the past, can very easily be taken or manipulated to get information or to steal information. Same thing goes with the light bulbs from China. The same thing goes with the cameras like that we install in our homes. Everything has the ability to talk to something else. It's the Internet of Things, if you guys have heard that term. So essentially what Zero Trust does at its core function is it limits what can be installed. So you'll see here denied by default. If it's not in a list that's been approved, it's not getting installed on that computer. If it's not checking to confirm that they use what are called certificates when you install a program, that the certificate doesn't match the actual vendor who's installing it, it won't be installed. If that application, which is what ring fencing is, decide like Spotify tries to go and start taking over printers or start pulling information because it has network control, that the application is stopped. If malware tries to go and call back home by using the command line, that the command line tools can't run. So this is essentially like having a bouncer at every single endpoint in your entire company network infrastructure, and making sure that you're saying what's allowed, what's not, and if it's not allowed, you kick it out and you don't even allow it to happen. If it needs to be allowed, then you build custom rules around it so that certain employees or certain devices or certain groups can install it, but others can't. So it gives you full granular control over every single device, every application, every program that tries to run across your entire network and on your computer. Much different than what antivirus currently does, which is just scans files and looks for things that are bad, right? There's a lot. I would personally rather have something like this running on my computer than Norton antivirus telling me, hey, I scanned this and nothing came up. Well, did you scan the right file or was it the wrong one? So you'll see this a lot more in the near future. There's a really big company in Orlando that does this and a few other ones that do this now. But you'll start seeing this pushback, especially in the enterprise realm, shortly. As far as technology, like you said, it's not just the computers, it's are we doing the right thing by our customers? Are we doing the right thing by our employees? Are we doing the right thing by our business model to make sure that we survive and that we can grow and thrive without having technology be like that kind of thing that's holding us back? Are we following the laws and restrictions that are in place? So I think the IRS put in a WISP requirement for CPAs a few years back. So you have some of those that have come up where most people just pay $500 and they do this thing and they put in the list and then they never look at it again. Those WISP requirements are extremely helpful and important when you're essentially running and controlling everyone's financial data as a CPA or an accountant, to make sure that if something were to happen, that you have an action plan and you know where in that process it broke, who had access to what, so you can address it quickly. Yes, Eric. Oh, sounds good. I'll send it out. Thank you, sir. So just as an example, 2022 average cost was $810,000. A client called us up after they declined some of our cybersecurity services back last year. They got hit with ransomware, targeted for $300,000. We stopped it in about 10 minutes. So the tools are not that expensive in the grand scheme of things, because the technology doesn't have to be that expensive, and it doesn't have to be that constraining. I think there's a bad thing against people in my industry, but I think people tend to overcomplicate things sometimes, especially when it comes to technology. It's not your guys' world. It's not your everyday what you guys do. So there has to be an understanding that the way that my brain works is obviously different than the way yours does. And the way that you guys think about business and finance is obviously different than the way I do. So the same way that you'd explain something to your customer or to your, to your boss or to your employees that are in your field, you have to have a little bit of a balance there, and really making sure that the understanding is there from a company culture perspective of like, are we setting up the right passwords? Are we putting things together that are easy for our team to use? Are we putting protections in place? Sounds good. Thank you. Are we making it simple for our team to go and check if we have questions, right? There's so many opportunities for businesses and IT and cybersecurity professionals to simplify things for everyone else, but they just choose not to. So I'm hoping that changes. Like I mentioned, lead by example. If you're a CEO, CFO, CTO, it shouldn't always come from the IT guy, right? I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but it really shouldn't come from me, right? It should come from that C-level that says, hey, this is important. This is our company culture. This is what we're going to do to protect us, our business, our clients, our employees. Foster a culture of cybersecurity, make sure that people aren't getting talked down to, and that technology isn't that complicated thing that feels like I can never understand it, right? Make it easy, make it simple, make sure people are heard, and if they have questions, make yourself available to help them. Essentially, strategy. I'm sorry, I'm going a little quick because I know we're out of time. You can do risk assessments. I recommend doing like 1 or 2 a year. Employee education and training should be constant, at least once a month on phishing simulation testing, especially during onboarding, and keep an eye on how well they're doing. If Jimmy's taken the cybersecurity assessment and every single month he fails and thinks it's funny and it's a joke, it's not going to be funny and it's a joke when he actually screws it up and costs the company $100,000. So really take that stuff seriously, especially from a leadership perspective, and make sure that the company understands, like, yes, it's annoying, yes, it's not fun, but we need to be prepared for these things because when they do happen, it's not a good time for anyone. Making sure you're using the right security software. You don't need everything under the sun. You just need a purpose-built plan for how you're going to respond to issues and to make sure that you have enough to support your business model. You don't need to spend $100,000 a year on cybersecurity if you're a small, medium-sized business. You can do it for half the cost, and you can make sure that your team has everything they need to be successful. AI, I'll go into just a little bit here, because I know we've kind of, let me see. Okay, yeah, really short of time. You see it with chatbots, you see ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Sora, all these different applications, right? It's all really cool. It's all really great. A lot of people say, hey, if I can get AI, I'll get rid of my business. I'll train my own CPA to be like the next Google, whatever. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be wonderful. But that's not really what it should be made to do, right? It's made to help us in our day-to-day activities. Automate repetitive processes that you don't want to do. If there's questions on your website or questions that your customers have, build that into tools that they can quickly answer and get the right answers that they need without taking up too much of your team's work or time, so they can do what they do best. Find processes that need improvement that you guys are like, hey, if we can do this and speed this up by 20%, our company infrastructure, our company would do this much better in certain areas. Analytics, definitely. You guys are all into finance and you see numbers all day, every day. It's really cool what AI can do based on projections, forecasting, future thoughts, when it can look at multiple pieces of data, not just financial. So really use it as a tool to help you, and then help it make decisions, right? Like, hey, brainstorm. Sometimes you don't need Gemini or Google or ChatGPT to give you all the answers. But if you're stuck and you're thinking about what's the best way to say this? What's the way that this happens? What's a very easy way to understand this really complicated concept that I'm trying to get across to somebody? Really, really great tool for that. What it hurts, AI will at some point start attacking us in some way, shape, or form. From a cybersecurity perspective, especially in the wrong hands. It makes tools more accessible. Phishing, like I said, voice, text, video of me or somebody else that you might know asking for things, pretending to be you. I heard somebody got a call one time that from what sounded like a family member that said that they were in a really bad car accident and they needed somebody to wire money or something like that. It was really weird. So you're seeing that go up a lot. Automated defenses can be helpful in a sense because you can sort of like almost predict what's going to happen before it happens, which is pretty cool. And then, making sure that it's constantly analyzed to see what kind of loopholes or gaps you might have. As a fun little thing, I mean, this is our approach of how we deal with cybersecurity. It covers 14 different areas of cybersecurity, or 16, sorry. And essentially each one of them, it's almost like a wheel of life. You pull one piece out and you kind of open yourself up for something. This is the bare minimum that I would think that most companies, depending on size, need. If you're a small business, maybe you can get away with like 4 or 5 less. But in today's day, these are the things that we kind of look at that can help. Having secure email protections in place, protecting the endpoint itself, making sure you're within compliance, making sure that your team knows how to train, that you guys are making sure that your information isn't being leaked on the dark web, your cloud backups. That's a huge one where everyone says, oh, my data's in the cloud. Well, that's great until somebody accidentally deletes it or until it gets deleted. And then you realize 30 days later that SharePoint and Google don't keep your data. That goes for Teams messages, documents, emails, etc. Is your environment documented? Are you guys doing network assessments, vulnerability scans? Or are your software up to date? Windows, Google, Adobe, huge open opportunity for vulnerabilities. Do you have ransomware tools in place? Do you have a password manager? And then, like I said, zero trust to make sure that you have some level of a control over your entire corporate environment.